Hello, welcome. My name is Cayetana and I'm a UK Ventures Program Designer. In this last video, we're going to talk about tips and tricks on how to present online. We have done already two big short videos that I would recommend you to watch prior to this one. The first one is about how to create a powerful business idea pitch, and the second one is about stories and how to create wonderful, engaging stories using your pitch idea. So please watch those before watching this one so you can get a full understanding on how to deliver and craft an amazing pitch that engages with your audience. First, I'm going to focus on the platform per se, the settings and the visual material. So everything that you need to have prior you start talking. And then I'm going to focus on the performance itself, okay? So first, where is the camera? As much as you can, try to set your computer in a position where the camera is eye level from you, right? So probably you've noticed that my eyes, as much as I can, have been looking straight into you. I'm looking straight into the camera. It's not always easy, of course. You have to look at your computer to move the slides and move things around. But as much as you can, try to engage with a little red pilot on your camera rather than look on your slides or look out of the window or look down, because the camera is like eye contact for you. You cannot screen the room as we usually do when we are face to face. The only thing you have now to keep eye contact is to look straight into the camera. So as much as you can, I will ask you to do that. Also, it's also important to keep a good distance between you and the camera. Don't get too close like this. That's weird. Don't get too far away because then you can't see me, right? Or you lose a little bit of attention. So try to keep good distance, good social distance between you and the camera in a way that people at least can see it to the top of your shoulders, right? In terms of microphone, same. Make sure that the microphone is working. Make sure that it's not mute. And sometimes it's easier if you don't use a headset. Sometimes the headset gets in the way and it doesn't really improve that much the microphone quality. So just check that. Something that, of course, you always need to double check with your participants, especially if you're delivering like a presentation and more than one person can access the meeting or can connect their microphones, is to make sure that they mute their microphones upon entry. Okay, so whatever crazy thing is going on in their backgrounds, you don't hear it and it's not distracting for you. Also, try as much as you can to control the light. Again, I understand we live in normal houses. We don't have video studios. This is not a Hollywood, right? So it's not that easy to play with the lights and to make sure that there are no outside rooms. But as much as you can, try to have a normal, warm, nice light, especially a light that is not like on top of you, that marks down your eye cycles. And it's not a vanity thing. It's just because research shows that if you look tired, and particularly with big dark cycles under your eyes, people think that you are not trustworthy. Why that connection happened in our brains, I don't know, but apparently it's a thing. So as much as you can, try to look nice and fresh, and if that means that you don't have to have like down light coming onto you, that's even better. So try to fix that up as much as you can, even if it implies that you have to move positions or have a couple of tests just before you start. You think you don't need to talk about internet speed, battery, and notifications, but boy, do I need to. Those are really important points. Make sure that, of course, you have good internet speed. If your internet speed is not the best, try as much as you can then to allow some time between Q&A when you engage with your audience, because it could be that it's a little bit of delay on your end or on their end, and then you start kind of talking over one another and the communication doesn't really work. So if you are aware that your internet connection is not the fastest, so that your speed is not the fastest, make sure that you allow 3-5 seconds between you talk and the other person talks. Battery, always charged. Even if you think, oh, I have plenty of battery, always charge. Being on video conference, especially if they are live, take up a lot of battery. So always connected, always charging. And then if you have other tabs on your computer, I will definitely suggest shut everything down, everything you don't need for this presentation, all the 10,000 tabs that you may have open, shut them down, and especially your email, shut it down. Because if you have emails coming up and then they have a small notification every time they come up, like ping, 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 super distracting, 100% unnecessary. So everything that is not connected with the talk, you can, of course, shut it down. And because, as you know, you can share your screen when you are presenting and you have a slide deck that you want to share with your screen. If you are on Zoom, for example, or Teams, Microsoft, you can share that quickly, but people can't see all the other screens that you have and all the other tabs. So it's always more elegant if you have everything closed down. In terms of platform, the platforms allow you to do many different things. This is not a Zoom webinar, so I don't walk you through all the functionalities of Zoom, for example, or any other video conference platforms. But what is really important for you to know is that these platforms allow you to set up waiting rooms, breakout rooms, have different backgrounds. So for example, I am in a nice neat room right now. If my room was a mess, or if I had pictures of my children in the background that I don't want to share with you, there is a functionality in both Microsoft Teams and in Zoom that allows you to blur the background or to put a different background altogether, like a picture or something. So you can always do that so you don't get a distracting background, or just you don't give people the opportunity to engage with whatever background or whatever house decor you have going on, right? So that's always an option. In terms of waiting rooms, I always suggest you guys to do so, especially if you're recording a session and you're not the first joining in. Create a waiting room, so if people join the call or the video conference earlier than you, they can be nicely waiting in a cyber waiting room without being recorded. So you don't have weird recordings of people like 10 minutes before the call starts just fixing their hair or on the phone with someone, right? And of course, remember that in all video conferences, there is a chat box functionality, so people can type up their questions in case they don't want to connect, or they can let you know about any internet issues they are having or any other things that they are struggling with. So always have that open and handy, because a chat box is always a really good tool to use. Sitting or standing, that's a really good question. That's completely up to you. If you want to stand, of course, you have to set up your computer differently, but I would always recommend, if you're an energetic person and you think you have good body language, a good hand gesture that will support your presentation, to try to stand up and maybe set up the computer on one of the shelves in a bookcase or something like that. Slide deck. Usually when you present face to face, I would recommend to go with as less words as possible. Here, because it's easier to disengage in an online setting, I think it's always a good idea to have a mix of visuals and words, and maybe have like some animation going on. So not all the words come up at the same time, but every sentence comes up when you want to emphasize it. And then if people get a little bit lost, they can read through and catch up pretty quickly. If you're gonna have videos, that's perfect. Just make sure that you embed them on the screen and on the slide deck, rather than having a link that takes you to the internet, because that's like 3 steps away from your slide presentation. And especially if you're sharing a screen, it gets confusing and messy. So as much as you can, embed it on your PowerPoint and on your presentation, so people don't have to leave the presentation, they just stay there. And again, as I said before, check in with the audience. Make sure that you engage with the camera as much as you can. It's very distracting if you can see yourself in a little screen at the bottom, like I can see myself right now. That's very distracting. It's very hard not to keep looking down on how you're looking, or if you're moving your hands too much or whatever. But as much as you can, remember that eye contact happens through you looking straight into the camera. And of course, this is not just about you. Make sure that you set some etiquette with your participants, that they know that they have to mute microphone upon entry, for example, that if they want to ask something, they have to connect camera and microphone, or at least microphone. If they are unable to do so, they can type up the question. If you don't want people to have to be like writing like crazy on the chat box as you speak, you can say, hey, please, while I'm talking, don't do the writing. I will ask you if you have any questions in 2 minutes, and then you can write as much as you want. Things like that. So whatever you need them to do, think about that beforehand and then communicate that clearly before you start your presentation. Okay, so we've covered everything that has to do with platform and logistics. Let's move into the delivery and engagement. So first and foremost, I think it's very important that you acknowledge the difference from face-to-face. If you walked into an online presentation hoping you will be the same that being in that room with another 30 people listening to a pitch or listening to a lecture or a conference, it won't be the same. You'll be disappointed. It's a different experience. It has to be delivered differently, but also it's another opportunity and another channel. So just acknowledge that difference and embrace it. Regarding body language, of course, you don't have as much room or as much opportunity maybe to express yourself with the body, but you still a body and you still have a body, so as much as you can, use it. If you're a good person with your hands, if you use your hands, for example, to enumerate points, and it's something that I do and consider super useful. For example, if I want to say the most 3 important things in my business are 1, 2, 3, and that's useful for the audience so they kind of follow me, but it's also useful for me because it emphasizes my points. I still can do that online, so as much as you can, do that. If you think you can use your hands wisely, use them. But remember that what you have here is your face and your hands. You don't have much more unless you stand up and set up the camera and everything a little bit differently. So it's a little bit more contained, but you still can use it and you still can get the most of it. What you really can use is your tone of voice and your poses. Very important to use your poses wisely. You don't want to lose people's attention by talking flatly or by just not making any poses. You want to keep that going and you want to have a little bit maybe more of extra dramatism. It's easy to disengage when you're on your computer. Someone is talking and suddenly you go on Facebook to check one thing and 20 minutes later you went down a rabbit hole on social media and you completely disengaged from the class. And that kind of monotonous voice keeps talking in the background. If that voice suddenly stops or asks a rhetoric question or does something unusual, that will draw me back immediately. So as much as you can, try to do that. Remember also that there will be delays and echoes, especially if your internet is not the best. So make room for that. Don't speak right after someone or just build in some time for that catch up to happen on the other side. And also, if there's something weird going on, like an echo, some feedback, something that is annoying, just mention it, acknowledge it, and then keep going, okay? If you ignore it, people will start thinking, is she hearing that? Can she hear that? Am I the only one who's hearing that? Is maybe my problem? And they will disengage thinking about that. Just acknowledge it, like, oh, it seems like we're having some echo. How fastidious. Hopefully that passes soon. And that's it, move on, okay? But acknowledge that that's happening. Same as if you are in a face-to-face workshop and suddenly there's a lot of noise coming from the other class, you will acknowledge that, right? Like, oh, wow, those guys are having fun in the other room, whatever it is, to acknowledge that something is interrupting you and therefore maybe you're a little bit distracted for a second, but then you carry on. Something that could be a little bit tricky when you're online, and we just touched on that briefly before, is that you can get questions 2 different ways. People can do that by connecting the camera and the audio, just connecting the audio, or altogether just going on the chat, right? So that will require different back and forth of you between both different channels. So just make sure that as much as you can, you set some rules at the beginning so people know what's your preferred alternative for them to ask questions. So that way you educate your audience and you let them know when. If you want them to ask questions all throughout and then you read them later, if they are just allowed to ask questions via the camera at the end, if they can ask questions only via camera but throughout all the presentation, whatever is your preference, make sure that you say that at the beginning. Otherwise, people don't know. That's new for them. So they'll do whatever they think, okay? Use our hands, we talked about that. Stand back when possible. That's especially for deliveries or presentations where you are going to engage with your audience. For example, you pitch a business idea and then you let people to ask questions to one another. To ask questions to you. Allow, if possible, for them to engage with one another, okay? For example, if you are pitching about your business idea and someone has a question about the ecosystem in Brisbane, maybe hold back for a couple of seconds if someone else wants to join in or step in and answer that question for you, okay? That's where you create a little bit of that organic conversation that happens when you are face to face. If no one replies, then you go in. But just sometimes, if you allow some time, or if you let them to connect by themselves, or it's just to engage by themselves with you jumping in straight away, you can replicate a little bit that feeling of online community. Good thing online delivery has is that you can see people's names and surnames as they join in. So as much as you can use those, like Sandy has a question. Kelly wanna say something. Good question, Max. As much as you can say people's names. If you have a presentation that is more than an hour long, please build in breaks and say we'll be back in 5 minutes if it's a live conference. If it's something that you're recording, say you can stop here and do this exercise. Please come back to the recording when you are back. So whatever type of presentation you're doing, you can always build in a break. If it's a pitch, you probably don't need it, but for a conference maybe, then that would be helpful. In any case, keep it shorter than a face-to-face. And I will say by shorter, I mean at least 1/3 shorter than what you planned, ideally half it. And a piece of advice, and I'm sure that's very personal, but what I've noticed when you are online, if you're someone that uses sense of humor or sarcastic humor or jokes, face to face, that sometimes doesn't translate well on the online environment. So maybe just be mindful of that and be very sure that whatever you say cannot be misinterpreted or be taken out of context. And then when you do Q&A, always repeat out loud the question you are answering. If it's something that someone typed on the chat box, you're going to need to read it out loud. If it's something that someone says, it's very easy that the other people in the room or in the video conference didn't hear it well. So always, as much as you can, repeat it out loud. And remember, no distractions. If you have a lovely cat that's going to purr, kick it out of the room. If you have lovely children that are going to ask for snacks, kick them out of the room. That's what I just did. Whatever interruptions, distractions can be in your household or outside your household, as much as you can, minimize them. That means switch this off, mobile phone off, or even outside of the room. And if you live in a suburban area or in a busy area with constructions going on, please lock all the windows and make sure that as much as you can, there are no outside noises that will bother you or distract you and your audience. That was it. I hope you enjoyed. Remember that another 2 videos where you found this one, hopefully you can watch this one too, on how to build amazing pitches and how to create and design stories around it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Looking forward to seeing you soon.